Hey guys, it's Clovis, and for this week's AI analysis video, we are going to talk about Warnheit levels. So, what is a Warnheit level? Each AI in the game, except one, has a logic function called ta_logic underscore get Warnheit level. This is the function the AI uses to predict the attack and defense values of your face down cards, so that it can determine if it wants to attack your face down cards or not. This will create an effect where the enemy is less likely to attack you if they have less of an advantage. In particular, if the AI has a lower life point value, they are less likely to attack your face down cards because they predict your face down cards to be higher. This value changes across almost all AI, and several of the AI have unique values. A handful of enemies also predict the attack and defense values of your face down cards to be 0, but we'll go into that a little bit later. Before we go into that, I want to break down how the values actually work. For each AI, there are 3 values. Let's call them a high value, a mid value, and a low value. The high value will be the highest attack and defense that the AI will ever assume your face down cards can have, low being the lowest attack and defense your cards can have, and of course mid being the value in between those. These 3 values are based on different conditions. First of all, for the high value, this is called when the AI's life points are low. I'm going to use Seto as an example because he's everyone's favorite, right? If Seto life points are 1200 or lower, he will assume your monsters have 2500 attack and defense. This means if he has no more than 1200 life points, he will not attack your face down cards with a monster that has less than 2500 attack because they assume your face down cards are stronger than his. Now for the mid value. This is basically the AI at its default state. If the AI's life points are not low enough to call for the high value, which in this case of Seto is greater than 1200 life points, it will default to the mid value. For Seto, this mid value is 1500 attack, so when he starts off a duel and has 4000 life points, Seto will assume all of your face down cards have 1500 attack and defense until something else changes. Think about the trick where you play a card in the middle of the field. Against Seto, remember the way that this works is that if he wants to play a monster in front of him, but it is a lower attack than the card in the middle of the field, he will play a monster out of the way to his right, and then move 2 spaces forward in an attempt to pathfind his way around the labyrinth back to his normal spot. In a speedrun of the game, the idea is that you simply play the highest attack card possible, but in the case of not having 1500 attack in the hand, you can simply play any card face down, and if the monster he wants to play on his first turn in front of him is lower than 1500 attack, he will play it out of the way and perform the same condition. If he had a low attack monster face up and he could beat it, or he wants to open with a monster that has more than 1500 attack, he will play it in front of him because he's confident that he can beat your monster with the information his Warnheit levels give him. If I fill Seto deck with monsters that have an attack of less than 1500, then I can play literally any face down card in the middle of the field, and he will do this trick every single time. Anyways, back to the other value, the low range. This uses the same life point range as the mid value, but if the enemy has a certain amount of monsters out on the field as well, they go from their mid-range value to this low range value. This is the lowest attack and defense that the enemy AI will assume your face down cards have. For example, if Seto has at least 4 monsters on the field, in addition to having more than 1200 life points, he now assumes your face down cards have 750 attack and defense. Now, this may seem odd, but remember, this is the AI's way of playing more aggressively when they have an advantage, which is sensible. For almost all AI, this low value is used when the opponent has at least 4 monsters, in addition to having that higher life point range. However, Bakura, Marco, and Jasper need the maximum of 5 monsters on the field to use this value, whereas Keith and Ishtar only need 3 monsters on the field to use this low value. On one hand, if the AI has more monsters and perceive themselves to have more of an advantage, it makes sense for them to play more aggressive. Another thing to consider, however, if the value is lower, they will attack with weaker creatures, and then if they are destroyed, it frees up the AI being able to cycle through more monsters as a way of getting rid of the max amount that they normally have. Warnheit levels make a lot of sense from a gameplay perspective in trying to make the AI play more aggressively when they have this perceived advantage, and play a bit more passive when they're closer to losing so that they don't crash into your high defense face down cards and lose the duel. If the AI always assumed your monsters had a high attack value, they would never attack. On the contrary, if they always assumed your face down monster's attack and defense were always 0, they would always attack as long as their monster had more than 0 attack. The way this works is that the low, mid and high values are merely all set to 0, so that no matter what conditions the enemy have in the duel, they will always attack any of your face down monsters as long as their monster has an attack above 0. Also a neat fact, all of the low values the enemy AI use are half of the value of the mid value. But anyways, talking about people who have a flat Warnheit level of 0, let's list these again. So let's break this down. Weevil and Rex are the first two Yorkist opponents, and then Taya and Tristan are the first two Lancastrian opponents. So it makes sense for these early opponents to have this value. This creates an effect where the early opponents are foolhardy, but also considering you've only just started the game, it makes sense for the enemy to not really assume you will play anything too threatening. Another surprise here is Richard. Despite being one of the later opponents in the game, he is also a bit of a doofus, and according to his lore, only recently learned the game and learned a trick or two from Seto that he thinks he can beat you with. Richard assumes his monsters can defeat all of yours, even if it is a 300 attack armed ninja. So, against these AIs that I've just mentioned, you can leave a monster with really high attack and defense values face down, and the enemy will always attempt to attack them with their monsters, even if they have a really low life point value and their monster is incredibly weak. But wait a minute, what about the final bosses of the game? Well, you could argue that it makes sense for them to be foolhardy as their monsters are so powerful that they are confident enough to destroy your monsters. However, if you play against them, it seems as if they know the attack and defense values of your face down cards. You can try this by playing an extremely high attack monster around the bosses, and they will never attack into it if they can't meet its attack and defense values. However, if your monster is really weak, they will attack it without hesitation, even if you have a face-up trap card or whatever. More information on stupid AI will be available in a future video, but this is peculiar that they have a Warnheit level function, yet they know the attack and defense values of your monsters and don't seem to attack you if your attack or defense points are higher, because that is not the case for Pegasus. So for Pegasus, he is actually the only AI in the game that does not actually have a TA_logic_get Warnheit level function in his AI. I'm not sure what function he has to allow you to see his cards, I've not found that. But we all know that Pegasus can see your cards if as if they're face up. As I mentioned in the Revolt missions video, and most people who have played against him can already tell, him seeing your face up cards regardless of what they are also means he does not need to guess your attack and defense values at any point, as he already knows your monster's attack and defense values to make a decision on whether or not he wants to attack them or move away. I'm not sure why the final bosses, again, have Warnheit levels when they know the attack and defense of your cards, but it makes sense that Pegasus doesn't, because he definitely knows what all of your cards are, as if every single one of your cards is face up. So, now that we've basically explained everything, all we have to do now is actually reveal the high, mid, and low Warnheit level values of the remaining AI in the game, apart from those who have 000, apart from Pegasus, who doesn't have any, and Seto Kaiba, who has a high, mid, and low value of 2500, 1500, and 750, respectively. If you want them in text form, I have put them in the description of this video, so you can always have a look at them. Anyways, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this video on the AI of Duels of the Roses, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Also, if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing to be notified about future videos, whatever they're going to be. And yeah, have a good day, and whatever goals you have this week or this month, I hope you smash them out of the park, and I hope your day or night or evening, afternoon, whatever is fantastic, and the next day and forward. See you later.